Welcome to Shapify Experiences, a media podcast where we have been talking about the future of digital experiences. Today, our special guest starts from developing games, passing through a low-code platform, and now Metaverse systems. And Miguel Melo. How are you, Miguel?
Thank you. Very good. Thank you so much for the invitation. Very happy to be here with you and discussing a little bit.
Yeah, maybe starting really from the beginning. So you at the beginning you were more in the game industry, starting on. Actually, electronic arts was
my
second.
My first paid gig. No, if you want to go to really ancient history,
Yeah, maybe your university and studies.
Of course. When I first saw the ZX Spectrum, and this sounds like the old folks conversation, I knew I wanted to work with computers, do software. So immediately, throughout my teenage years, I started developing and learning programming, etc., which meant that immediately I had to go and take software engineering as a degree. And as I approached the end of my course, and then, the decisions were no longer made for you what you do next, I said, okay, now what am I going to actually do for work? And what I always liked to code was interactive systems, games, entertainment, and so on and so forth. So indeed, I decided to start my career after university in the games industry. Yes. Yeah. And the first paid gig that I had, the first job that I had was indeed with electronic arts.
Yeah, because at that time, I think a lot of persons at the time thought like that. Okay, I start using computers, but I use computer to play some games. So I want to create games, and it's software development. And a lot of persons start on that, like how I want to know how to create these systems, right?
Yeah.
And how was that journey? How was I saw that some of the games that you work at that time was soccer games.
Yeah. Good memory. So indeed, it's one thing that people that work in business software don't realize is the games industry, you work in a lot of things that then don't get released. So, start with the negative thing. And actually, my first game at Electronic Arts never got released.
Okay.
I still have a gold CD somewhere where you can play a demo, but no one has ever actually been able to
play that one.
But the first one that got released was FIFA Soccer Manager.
Okay.
So it's part of the FIFA brand, but it was a management that tried to go a little bit against the championship manager market. Obviously, we never were able to grab that market from them because to this day they're the reference.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So after that, at that time you were in UK.
UK,
right?
yes. So I finished my degree. I studied in Lisbon, and I did my Erasmus already in the UK with the idea of applying to companies there. And I was successful in doing so. So in 95, when I finished my degree, I moved to the UK. And all the 5 years that I was there, I worked in the games industry. I started with EA. Then I moved to Sony Computer Entertainment. At the time, they still developed for PC as well. The PS1 had been released, but they were still a multi-system, and they even developed for Sega at the time.
Okay.
And then, a couple of smaller companies, then Take-Two Interactive, and then my swan song, so my last appointment in the UK, was working in actually video card drivers, so fairly low-level stuff, still related to games because they were the DirectX drivers.
So but it was much more hardware, almost like.
Initially, I was coming just for the drivers, but they were actually working on a new chip, and I ended up also contributing and being involved in the team that tested the software version of something that would then be cut into a chip. So you end up programming all the software that goes into a chip. You write the unit tests for them. You run it very slowly, as you can probably imagine, right? But you validate because once you make the chip and you find bugs there, then you're in big trouble.
Completely. And when you return to Portugal, then you start working more in software industry.
In the serious software, you mean? Yeah. So when I moved back initially, I joined a company that was creating a web development platform based on Java. And over there, I was more focused on what would be the entertainment uses for that platform. Now, we're talking the year 2000, and that was, everybody knows, a very tough time for IT, and the bubble burst, and that company didn't pursue. And, shortly after the period there in 2021, I get a call from an unknown company if I wanted to come for an interview. And I guess you know what that company is.
Yeah, then you joined OutSystems, and then for 15 years.
Yes. So it's interesting. I get a call from OutSystems, and I didn't know them. No one in OutSystems, well, the 5 people that were in OutSystems personally knew me. To this day, I had a conversation with Carlos Alves, which was the person who actually rang me up and say, where did you get my CV? And he doesn't remember. So, I think fate wanted me to join OutSystems. And at the time, there was no server, there was no platform of OutSystems. There was just Service Studio, just the IDE, and it was very early days. And I was coming from, interactive development, visual development, and I thought this is actually a very interesting challenge in terms of the product that's being designed. If I get to be working on Service Studio, that's what I want to do, right? And then indeed I joined the R&D team, where I stayed for 9 years. And for the majority of that duration, I was more involved in the IDE side than on the server side. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Did you find the things that you learn on the software for games, it was useful to at some point in the developing of OutSystems? Because as you're saying, it was visual stuff. So the games are totally visual. So that part is already something that we can relate. But there's something more that help you creating the studio in the right way.
It would be really interesting if I said that there was a lot of learnings in the games industry that were immediately useful for OutSystems and for Service Studio. I mean, certain things like the performance when you actually do something, the system needs to react. That intrinsic feeling that this doesn't feel right because you're doing something here and something happens outside of where you're looking at. That was quite obvious, something that helped a little bit. At the same time, and this is interesting, the games industry in the late 90s where I was, I cannot say for now, but it was fairly unstructured. It was a little bit Wild West, creative people doing creative stuff. And OutSystems was really the first place where there was a structure. It was also the time where Agile came. So there was also a way of working that was being very much used in OutSystems and also shaped the platform itself. So I think the process for the most part and how to do things more sanely was captured mostly in OutSystems. Yeah, but the sense of this doesn't feel right or it doesn't flow and there's a disconnect here when someone is interacting that I captured through years of doing wrong things that took too long.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, both are visual. And what about so when you start working OutSystems in a very technical role at the beginning, really working in the studio
So and those I think first 9 years really I was very, very involved in the coding, right? So and which was my DNA up until then. I just loved technology for technology's sake. I loved the process of coding. I loved the process of seeing the code run. So yes, that was very, very focused. And I had several responsibilities there, as team lead for version 4.2 and so on and so forth. And then I started helping a little bit more also on the server side. Also, for a period, I managed the maintenance team, which at the time were 3 people, which is crazy now that I think about how big OutSystems is. But yes, very, very hands-on, very, very.
What are the main challenges that you can remember by creating a platform like OutSystems? Which challenges? What are the biggest ones that you can remember that were harder to solve, that maybe needed some interactions?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, which I think actually was what produced the more hindsight or insights and actually the value of low code was, how can you boil down complexity to, a sweet spot where you still have flexibility, but you don't you don't have enough rope to hang yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of this actually was coming from Paulo Rosado, who was very pragmatic, and he would sort of say, how many properties does this widget have? I think we can do with half of those. And we normally, the techies would like to throw everything in the kitchen sink, right? Yeah. We would like to have all of that. We go, no, surely, because there might be an edge case where someone wants this.
Yeah.
And I think this process of how do you distill the essence of things, I think was something that is very intrinsic to the value proposition of low code, and it's something that to this day helps me think about what I build.
Yeah, you're saying that, and I was imagining studio in my head, and I can agree with that. Like the way that the studio are structured, of course it have a lot of options, but it could have much more, and so it's simple enough to be easy to use. I was imagining studio. There are other platforms, other kind of similar kind of platforms that became much more complex because, as you're saying, have everything. You can configure everything, and then it's hard to understand where is some specific things. That simplicity is nice.
If you were too complex, you erode the value proposition of low code. And obviously, OutSystems was taking off at the same time that that Jobs was working at Apple, and that realization that you can touch the user and the client by having less stuff, that less is more, was something that I think translated very well into the philosophy of OutSystems.
Of OutSystems, yes. And actually can translate that for software development in general.
Absolutely. Because as a counterexample, I think probably this still exists. We had this tool for doing queries and whatnot in Oracle, which was called, I think, Toad.
Okay.
I should Google to see if Toad still exists. But it was the most complex thing. There was like 1 million icons, all of them horrible to look at. They came clearly from different, tile sets or whatever. And that was the absolute contrary approach to OutSystems. Yeah, and it is an approach to software, and it ends up, if you want it to be an approach to life, you try to boil down things. And I'm not always able to boil things down too, but at least I know I'm in the wrong when I don't try to.
When you try, and sometimes I think it's not just to reduce the quantity of options. Sometimes it's also about reducing the options at the time. Correct. Like the options
disclosure.
Maybe the options still exist there, but are not all at the time. Like you find a way to have an interface that is simple enough for the task that you are doing at that moment, and then if you start doing other things, you start maybe seeing other options, but not too much things at the same time.
And again, we were very fortunate to live through a time also where like the crap usability rules. CRAP as in CRAP, were also being developed. So there was like really a movement towards, sanity in interaction, right? And you see a lot of that in low-code platforms, which were proponents of this indeed.
Yeah. So and still in OutSystems, so you start in a technical role, but then you went to community management and training.
Yes. So 9 years in being in OutSystems, and then I would say, plus the 5 years I had worked in the games industry, or 6 years, and plus all the years I'd been a coder, I thought like, okay, is there something new that I should be learning beyond, just the code and the purity of the code and so on? And I realized actually, it would be interesting to understand the people who actually use this, because in R&D we were quite safeguarded from the frontiers where you need to then sell this to a client. And I just wanted to talk and also move a little bit in towards to understand the users. Then an opportunity arose to be community manager, which I embraced, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because for the first time I was in the front lines and talking with people and realizing, oh crap, we made this decision and maybe it was not the optimal decision, So I think it was very interesting because I got to interact with lots of intelligent people that use the OutSystems platform. That's one side. I was also in a point where I could mediate the wants of the community towards engineering, which they know me very well, and it was a smaller company also at the time, and likewise project what was being developed and kind of try it for size, how would the community react. So I was there for a year and a half, and indeed I think it was my first step to a more blended responsibility of technology for the people. Shortly after that, I joined the training group. At the time, we were preparing the version 10, which was going to be the first version with, which also had a proper mobile version. So there was a lot of, we had decided we wanted to change the structure of teaching at OutSystems because the self-learning was the flavor of the age.
Time,
but we wanted to also make the contents more compatible to other forms of teaching, namely the classroom. So there was a challenge here: is how do we teach OutSystems in a progressive way that can be taught either in classroom or by yourself. So that, I think I was involved there for like 3 years, something. Now first, just delivering the boot camps, still in format 9 of the platform, and then jumping into, how do we revive and how do we republish.
Like creating the courses online and the recorders.
Yes. And that was very interesting because I've always loved teaching, so the classroom experience per se, just of itself interacting, the moment where a student, the eyes light up because they get it, right? It's always very rewarding. But also I then realized, okay, I know quite a bit of the platform. I know some of the bad things maybe we did, talking with users. I have, a big interest and a heart for the learner, how can I put this into a course and put it in the blender so it's the best possible? And at the time we had a really good team. So we created, the new coursework, the labs, and the recordings, which unfortunately, I did the recording, so everyone had to put up with my broken English.
Okay.
So it
was your voice then.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yes, the course 10 for web was my voice. I apologize. See you in the next lesson. I still get this. I'll never leave this one down.
No one likes their own voice. I don't like my voice also. One thing that I think your personality is like a lot of developers are more they are not so much communicative. So I think that changing from more technical to community to educational perspective, it fits very very well on you because you are a very communicative person. I really imagine you giving lessons and managing the community in OutSystems actually.
Thank you. Now I obviously you lose some technical focus when you're also people-minded. It's always checks and balances in life, right? And some people are, so technical that I would not be able to, to reach their excellence. And some people are born speakers. I do okay-ish on both, and I try to, to try to bridge the gap. Maybe
and connect one thing to the other.
Things it's probably where I can make more difference indeed.
Yeah, and actually that is very very important for the next roles that you have after, because having a technical perspective and communication skills, as you're saying, can bridge the gap. And when you need to manage people or other kind of roles that are more strategic, this is very Yes.
Yeah, so I was 15 years, keep up, people. I was 15 years at OutSystems, which, to be honest, when I first started, there were like troubled times with, 9/11 and so on and so forth. So I didn't know how long OutSystems would last. I would just have to find
you
work.
were thinking, actually, you mentioned before, you start OutSystems. OutSystems was small thing
And
at the beginning.
They fly the planes against the towers. You don't know how long it's going to go.
And then 15 years.
Yeah, and then 15 years, really, because I think the challenge kept being renewed, and obviously the platform was able to make a stake in the ground and expand. But still, I had always been a product person, right? Still in those capacities at OutSystems, and I thought like, okay, maybe it's interesting now that I've delivered and got out there and talked with people a little bit more. Maybe it would be interesting if I can look at several challenges that maybe are more vertical oriented. How does this get applied into, say, retail or to insurance and so on and so forth? So I started warming up to the idea of, going into services, which was, to be honest, a very scary proposition for me.
Okay.
And as I was thinking about this, an opportunity arose to go and help a OutSystems partner in the Netherlands, a new OutSystems partner, create their business line there. And I thought, okay, at the time, my family structure also allowed me to, go again to abroad. And I thought, okay, let me try this out. And indeed, I joined a partner in the Netherlands, first as a technical specialist, because obviously I had a bit of knowledge about the platform, given my history, and eventually, helping out as business line manager. And it really was the first time I had to worry about allocations, making sure, line management in a broader sense, and making sure that people, are happy and they're placed in a client that's fulfilling, but at the same time, that you make the bottom line, right? So that was also quite as you said, a different.
Yeah, what you find the most differences? So because in OutSystems you're more focused on the product, and then in that company's services, you're providing service, so you're using the product, but you are selling services. What is the main differences? What is the things that you can find as the main differences between developing a product or providing services? Even if you are creating a product, the same, but you are providing services for a third party.
Yes, it is interesting, and it is somewhat humbling, because when you're in the product, for better or for worse, you own the backlog. Obviously, you need to make sure that you go towards market fit, so you cannot be, developing something in a vacuum, right? Otherwise, your company is not going to last that long. But there's still, a buffer.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you're providing services, you are exposed a lot more to, to the will and the priorities of a third party, which is actually your client, right? And I found this very difficult in the beginning, and it's actually something that it's patently different in terms of vibe for a product company versus a services first company. And that I noticed that in that particular company, and discussing this with people that I had met in the Netherlands was what we tried a little bit to achieve when we set up Product League, which has product in the name, with the intention of aiming to be a bit of a hybrid between services and actually product ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that about the name.
Yeah. It was an interesting process. We went through so many names. I wish I had kept them all. Some of them were so ridiculous. And we ended up with Product League because of Justice League, because we had the whole superhero spiel going. And product because I put my foot down and says, it cannot be Project League, it has to be Product League. Because what's in the name is what you then try to do.
And could you make it? Could you make that mix of in Product League creating services, but with a concept of not really the concept? How did you say it?
With the mindset?
Yes.
Well, in practice, I think there was a challenge. To be honest, I don't think we got it to the point that at least I wanted it. But then again, I was very formatted as a product person, right? Maybe, who's to say that I wasn't being too much of a zealot about being product or whatever. So, but the idea that I had, which was actually that we had, which was trying to grab some of the ownership on, I would say, maybe a couple of clients we were close to it. And I can explain a little bit the structure that Product League has, or certainly had even more so at the time where we tried to address this. But as the years progressed and as the number of clients widened, I noticed that we were not able as much to have the ownership to then build something that we could spin off as a product on the side.
Yeah, and of course it should depend a lot of the client. The client allows you or not, or give you more freedom or not to make that. But thinking on that, it makes sense. Like if the client understand the value and understand that, let's see your software as a product, and then trust on the company to look at it as a product, as a little bit if it's their own product. I see a lot of value on that, because it instead of being just services and being always like a contract and client and all of the budgets and bureaucracy associated, it became something more internal and probably more efficient.
Yeah, I think, okay, so as I hinted a little bit, what was it? What were the observations that I had on the previous company that we tried to address at Product League? One of them is that the level of maturity that the clients that came to us or to low-code partners in general was not always to the level that would be ideal to produce a good product for them. Okay. So what I found was a lot of OutSystems partners were happy to just provide, technical roles, presuming that the client knew what they needed. Right? And we got the feeling that was not the case. So the Product League approach was to have multidisciplinary teams where we effectively notice where the client is in terms of maturity, in terms of capabilities, and a lot of the times their capabilities to ideate a product are greatly exaggerated, because what they say is that we have this subject matter expert here that's really, really good. He can be a business analyst, but obviously he knows the business, but he doesn't have the formality to break it down, right? So what we did is we effectively acknowledged this and said, okay, we will provide product owners, business analysts to help you unpack your needs, and we'll also provide you access so you can express your needs in a visual, coherent way, as we were earlier talking. And then obviously we provide you with the developers, and we would try to tailor it. And I think whenever the client sort of saw value in onboarding these multidisciplinary teams, that's when we were closer to productizing stuff. When the clients saw us as a implementation help rather than a partner, a thinking partner, that's when effectively we behaved more as indeed a supplier.
Yeah, on that second part, basically we or the team provide knowledge to solve what the client wants to solve, or to do what the client says for you to do.
Correct.
And then is a little bit responsibility of the client to give the proper tasks to say exactly. I totally review or like in MediaWeb we are focused so much on the user experience part, and I was viewing ourselves on that spectrum really, because when we go deep on user experience services, understanding the user, understanding the pain of the client, and trying to validate what client say to us, a lot of times we end up in a solution totally different of what the client will ask us to do.
Absolutely. And I think it's the difference, we talk a lot about business, business transformation. Yeah, and what I find is a lot of what's asked of technology companies, partners, is transcription, right? Okay, we have this Excel, put this Excel on a web page. And depending on how open the client is to sort of say, what is the first principle? What are we trying to solve here? Is there ways we can expedite this? Are there data sources we can use to remove some of the steps to, again, boil down the properties like we discussed earlier in local platforms and in OutSystems to the essence. So, people are more efficient. So it's about doing outcomes rather than transcribing what's there into a fancy new system that's not, that hasn't passed by its shelf life or its support window, right? So I think it is a little bit different, the framework. And it depends a lot on how visionary and how trusting your clients, say the CIO is, of your capabilities and your temperament to be a partner rather than just be, a supplier that's there for the money, right?
Yeah, and I think that the really advantage, or I don't want to say advantage, like it's not that the service company can be better than the client. Is the multidisciplinary persons that in that concept you bring to the table, that each one of them give different perspective, and then that disciplinary team can have a better outcome than just a person or two from the client giving you what he wants.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, there's that old saying, there's nothing new under the sun, and there's a lot of findings and experimentations that you do in one vertical that you probably can transcribe to another vertical, even if it's small things, right?
Yes.
And when you service several verticals, you can look at this particular problem with the lens of what you saw over there. So that's, for example, in terms of practices, is something you can do. Also, people that are specialists in, say, UX or whatever, they accompany the development of the tooling. What's the best tooling? What are the compromise? Why should you use Figma or Penpot or whatever, right? And obviously the clients never looked at that, right? And the tooling also says a lot about what you think is possible, for the better and for the worse, right? Yeah. But I always think that more knowledge is better than less knowledge.
Of course.
And I think this is what the several domains bring to the discussion.
Completely. So we just jump a little bit, because the first company in Netherlands, you went to the first company and then open Product League.
Yes, 2018, correct.
Okay. At the beginning, also more of a technical role, but then we end up a CEO.
Yes. So yeah, I started first very much in the technical role. I knew everyone at OutSystems also, that facilitated the relationship with the platform provider, our main platform provider. And then I started building the team and trying to work out what would be the best way of working, because also we had all these disciplines, what's the endovers between UX, is this the responsibility of a BA or a UXer? And you ask two people and you have three options. Three opinions, right? So there was a focus, and I was very much a CTO for that period. In 2021, my business partners, left the company, and I had to step up also to the responsibility, fill in for being a CEO.
Okay.
And for the first time ever, I looked at a plethora of other things that, although I was a founder and I would hear about them, they were not my responsibility or not my primary responsibility. So indeed, in 2022 was when I completely went out of my comfort zone and sort of said, okay, what's a P&L, what's a balance sheet, and what do we need to meet, and what's profit margins, and all sorts of things which I'd never looked at until that time.
Yeah, but always was a harder time, but at the same time is in that times that we'll learn the most.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. It drove me crazy. I mean, I wouldn't sleep at night. I would be thinking, I'm woefully inadequate for this role. And you get all those pressures of, you need to sink or swim. At that time, OutSystems was nearing 100 employees. So, all of a sudden I was ultimate responsible for 100 people, right, and their families. So it's not an easy job, and nothing really prepares you for it.
Yes.
You just need to jump in there and try to make the best out of it. Yeah.
What did you learn more by passing from a technical role to a much more management CEO role?
That's a tough one. I realized that actually technology is easier than people in general, right? But you cannot have outcomes without the people. I mean, it's a combination of both. So one of the things that I did notice is, how, technical focus does not prepare you for all the variables that are needed for a success of a company and of professionals. So I think that was, a moment. I don't know if I answered your question or I just kind of went.
Yeah, you are already answering a little bit. But
yeah. So I think.
Yeah, I think you answer. So as you were saying, when you are working as a technical guy, you are more focused or you are more limited, and you are not aware of the quantity of things necessary for that thing to have success.
Yeah. No, correct. As hard as development is, it's more deterministic than a sales process or a sales pipeline. You're at 60%, woohoo, and then it goes down. And whenever you're implementing something, unless a new version gets rolled out and the API is broken, for the most part you feel like you're making.
You have more control, right?
Yeah,
like you know what will happen, or I need to do something. I have my tasks defined or more or less defined. I can go after that objective. But in the market, because a company is very random. Things that can happen.
And the leveraging the ability of people is both an outside job. You need to talk with the client and make sure that he understands what the value you're trying to propose, but it's also an inside job where you talk with your colleagues and you make sure that this person's personal ambition is met, as long as it's possible and aligned with the greater strategy of the company, right? And sometimes it's not at all possible, and it's.
Because it's too much variables.
Too many. You have 100 people who want different things. Some want more work-life balance. Some people want more. I just want to really learn a lot. And you need to make sure that you support both of them in their cycles, in their lives, and try to make the best out of their personal traits, effectively.
Yeah, that inside of the company.
That's inside the company.
Then you have your clients that also have a bunch of variables that affect your business. And then you have the market that will affect, or the location, or everything affect.
It's multivariate all the time, and this is why then normally people in management don't sleep as well as they would like to.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Then after Product League, we talk a little bit like you. Nowadays, you have been thinking so much about the future, and now you are in the Metaverse Forum. How is exactly the name?
Metaverse Standards Forum.
Standards Forum.
Yes. So last year, we're recording this in 25. So in 24, I started looking again. Where was the challenge? Where was technology going to go in terms of experiences and so on and so forth? Also, for use in the platforms that like local platforms, but generally, what's the expectations and where is the technology going? And I realized that there were quite a lot of things going in terms of development of new standards for visualization, development of headsets, and now you got the smart glasses with Meta and so on and so forth. So and all of these things were under the umbrella of something that's called the Metaverse, which has become a bit of an unfortunate word because people now associate it with Meta, the company, and it's not a Meta product. So effectively, it is an umbrella concept that has underneath a lot of advancements in technology and also, like for example, networking and so on and so forth, but also societal ones, because whenever you start wearing glasses all the time and you're recording, does Nelson want, is okay that I'm recording this, so it's a very, very broad discussion that is effectively a discussion for what the society and interaction look like in the future, and what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's possible, what's not possible. So I went into this, this is interesting. And then I realized that this was such a big world. And at the same time, I felt, okay, at Product League, I think I've accomplished what I wanted to do in that scope. So I said, okay, maybe I would like to focus into this. And then I started looking into this Metaverse thing. I think via Google search, I ended up in the Metaverse Standards Forum, which I joined. And the Metaverse Standards Forum, very simply, it is a forum with several working groups where people from both the SDOs, that's Standards Development Organizations, and people, practitioners, so commercial companies, can come and discuss the observed use cases that aren't properly addressed with the current levels of interoperability we have in the systems. So it really is, for the older people that are like sci-fi, which is probably, now I've lost 98% of the people who are listening to this. It's a little bit like Babylon 5, all the several, in Babylon 5, all the several species or the several kingdoms would come and discuss, how they can live in peace and fight a bigger threat. And, and in the metaverse, the bigger threat is the complexity of the future, right? And it is, I joined with the intention just listening to these several working groups and
start understanding
what's involved, right? And indeed, I've been attending there first, initially just as a lurker, but then later last year, I joined as one of the chairs of the Standards Register Working Group. And this year, earlier this year in March or something, I joined the board of the Metaverse Standards Forum. Yes.
Yeah. So in that context that you have been, I believe you were exposed to a lot of some more technical things, other more visionary ways of using. But actually, we were also discussing like metaverse. You can see it as a whole or pieces, right?
Yeah.
Like little pieces that can be augmented reality or some other things. Maybe a doubt that I have or a question that a lot of people have is like what are that pieces? How can we describe what is metaverse or the ways that the user can interact? What are you already described some of them, like classes and things. Can you go a little deeper on that?
So, and this is a non-consensual definition because the great thing about the metaverse is that everyone has a slightly different angle, and it used to be sold as a lot more wholesale, like this is a thing that will be kind of bought, but indeed, when you look into it, several things. What is probably the most compelling definition of the metaverse? It is the internet of the future, associated and transcribed and used within a spatial computing, 3D aware sort of environment, right? So think of it a little bit as all the challenges that were in the creation of the internet and the World Wide Web, which create a layer whereby people can plug in services in our web pages and plug in places where they can write their stuff, their blogs, etc. What will this kind of digital presence for individuals and for companies, what is it going to look like in terms of the ways you can interact? So indeed, there's a lot of angles which are how do you interact? And you have haptics. One of the problems when you're doing something VR is you don't feel like you're touching anything. How do we address this? When you're walking, you're not actually walking. So there's some technologies for shoes that kind of slide, and there's also visualization systems. But then you have things like, okay, if we want to push all this data, we need more efficient networking layers. And what will 6G allow us to do to cater this? And as I said, ethics is a very important thing, because all of a sudden we had the discussion of cookies, et cetera, what can people track and what can people not track already in the classical internet. We're now going to need to decide what it is possible that we can capture and process, right? And we process, it's okay to process just on the headset and not send it to the cloud. Is it a headset or smart glasses? Is it not possible? You want to opt out? Should I be, if I would like to be living in a Warhammer world, should I be able to see you, visualize you as a Warhammer character, just because for fun, and look at this and see this as a dungeon? Is it okay? Is it something that the owner of this house would want, even if it's just virtual? He's put a lot of care in putting this. I mean, you put a lot of care in putting the logo here. If I put the dungeon here, it might be defying a little bit the intention of this nice environment that we have, because it's just my thing. And what does this mean when we have a shared conversation? Because I will say, I was worried about the troll, and what you troll? Oh, yeah, sorry, I was working. So there's a lot of angles. That's technology, and there's, how does, civil discourse and how does ethics work. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and very
broad.
Broad, yes. A lot of things, a lot of details, a lot of details. But we can see metaverse in general, or as a big picture, like in the edge, something like Matrix. Like that, you have a virtual. This is really the edge outside. But something like, okay, now we have a computer that we interact and we see something in the physical world. But with the headsets or with other kind of technology, we will be able to be immersed in other place.
And people are looking at this differently. My personal opinion is the biggest selling point of whatever this metaverse is to still augment our real reality. I mean, I come from games development, so I think VR is great. I have my Meta glasses. I have a lot of fun. I advise everyone to get one. So I enjoy it, but I don't think that's going to be what's going to make this explode. I think it's going to be the incremental to our life experience, to our current life experience. Someone said, the great thing about reality is it's the only place you can have a good steak, right? In VR you cannot. So what I do think is, indeed, we'll keep, and I hope we keep living in our reality, but we will have, certain of the functionalities at the most basic, some of the functionalities that now require us to pull the phone from our pocket, we will have them on demand. I can be looking
in the more
organic way.
Organic way, exactly.
I think that's, and there's still a million challenges in there, but I think it's the less dystopic version. And obviously, you then can go into full immersion mode and play Warhammer in there, okay? But I don't think that's still going to be a smaller experience for a smaller crowd.
Yeah, I do agree. So maybe one of the things that is like the mobile devices and the computers are the current way of interaction, and we are going in a direction that maybe we don't need to always be holding something, and we have a more interconnected system.
And also these digital realms, or this digital meta information is important also as a feedback for AI. And we're now all talking about AI, and I'm just going to make a small bridge, because a lot of people sort of said, well, metaverse is something that's like so 2022, but then AI came and it killed metaverse. Actually, I think AI was the one step back, so that these experiences can take two steps forward. So because it unlocked quite a few use cases that you can now have, which we couldn't.
I think it's not one thing or other. They complemented each other and make it AI and metaverse together.
Correct.
Create the more possibilities.
I think if you think about spatial computing or the AR side of thing as a prime prime interface for some of the functionality that we currently have based on compute, or AI or whatever, I think we're going to unlock quite a few experiences and quite a few use cases that are not apparent right now.
Yeah, I think we could continue talking here about just this topic about metaverse and the future of digital experiences. We could make a podcast just about that.
Let's do that.
Yeah, unfortunately now, at least today, we are getting without time. But thank you so much to being here with us, and thank you for listening us. So just a brief recap. So we talk a lot about your professional experience, but from the games to OutSystems, training community members, product and services developing, or the both concepts, and then at the end, this metaverse and the future of digital experiences. Thank you for listening us.
Thank you.